He carried no weapon, wore no shoes, and slept under open skies, not out of necessity, but conviction. He believed heaven wasn't above us, it was beneath our feet, in every Appleseed, every breeze, every moment unlived for gain. His real name was John Chapman, but history buried him under the nickname Johnny Appleseed, and with it buried the truth. Swedenborgian mystic who rejected wealth, rejected control, and wandered west not to claim the frontier, but to sow something holy in its shadow. He wasn't planting apples, he was planting freedom from everything people thought they needed.
Sounds like the Unabomber.
They say we may be living in the end times. My grandma said the same thing and we were fine.
Okay, welcome to 55 folks. I'm Brian. Sam unfortunately could not make it in studio this episode. Okay, so this video was one of the top suggestions from our recent call for suggestions. This is going to be an ongoing thing, so please leave a comment here with your suggestion for one of our future videos. Johnny Chapman was a Christian mystic, walking barefoot through America's Midwest frontier. He refused to kill any living thing, even insects. But he wasn't a wanderer. He was a kind-hearted businessman, and he found a very specific formula that led to his accumulation of 1,200 acres of land by his death. He grew up with Swedenborgian Christianity. It taught him that material wealth was spiritually distracting, and because of that, he adopted radical simplicity from an early age. So as a result of his faith, he refused to wear shoes, he lived outdoors, and he wore discarded clothing even in the winter, rejecting comfort as unnecessary and dangerous to the soul.
He was grounding. Have you heard of grounding?
Oh yeah, walking barefoot on the earth. Yeah,
It's supposed to be
I do.
good with the.
I play golf barefoot sometimes.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm ahead of the.
I water
the curve.
water my yard barefoot sometimes.
Yeah, get a nice grounding session in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I do it because the grass feels good, but maybe there's more to it.
Well, they say something with the
Also, it's just
electrons.
hot. Because of Swedenborg's belief that nature was sacred and spiritual truths were mirrored in physical life, he made it his mission to live in harmony with the land. I looked up what exactly Swedenborgian denomination was, like versus the other Protestants at the time. It's officially known as the Church of New Jerusalem, based on the writings of the Swedish mystic Emanuel Swedenborg. And their core beliefs were, one, nature is divine, not fallen. So most denominations of the time, Calvinism, Methodism, Baptism, viewed nature as fallen, corrupted by sin, and something to be subdued or converted. Swedenborgians, by contrast, saw nature as sacred. Every tree, river, and animal was a symbolic expression of divine truth. So that's like why he walked barefoot and he refused to harm animals. It's like built into Swedenborgianism. Number two, God is love, not wrath, whereas mainstream preachers often emphasized God's judgment, hellfire, and salvation through belief in Jesus alone. Swedenborg taught that God was pure love and that all sincere paths, even outside Christianity, could lead to heaven. Three, Bible was symbolic, not literal. Swedenborgians interpreted Scripture symbolically, not literally. Every word of the Bible had layers of meaning tied to the inner world of the soul and the natural world. And we'll get into more of that. One of his big things was he would go, when he's out walking around barefoot, he'd go place to place and he'd read Scripture with people. Salvation was through living a good life. Mainstream Christian doctrine emphasized faith in Christ as the key to salvation. Swedenborgianism taught that what mattered was how you lived, your intentions, actions, and inner love. Chapman gave freely, harmed little, and lived simply not to earn heaven, but because he believed heaven was already here in how one lived.
It sounds like almost a different, like not just a different denomination, but almost a different religion.
Yeah, it seems more almost Eastern.
Yeah.
Eastern mystic. I mean, they did say, it says Emanuel Swedenborg was a mystic, so it's kind of infusing that with viewing Christianity through that lens, I guess, is kind of the Swedenborg. Chapman planted apple orchards on the frontier as a fusion of practical foresight and spiritual mission. The trees he grew were bitter, seed-grown varieties and primarily used to make hard cider. They weren't like to have fresh apples to eat. The cider was a crucial frontier staple when clean water was scarce and fermentation meant survival. It's also used for alcohol a little bit. I think from what I found, it was more so used for survival than alcohol. But so Chapman his whole thing was he tried to gauge where settlement was about to take place, where people were going to be moving too soon, and he would go and establish nurseries in these locations ahead of settlement. His main travels were Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois. So he lived very simply, and people all knew him as this very kind, but kind of weird, barefoot guy, spiritual guy. And he was a businessman to some degree. I mean, he made his living doing this thing that he liked, I guess, but he did both buy and sell land. Like he'd come back, tend to the orchard, keep the land or sell it off to settlers of the new area. He would sell or trade the young trees that he had planted years before to the people in the area that now needed them. He used the land laws at the time to his advantage, where you just needed to plant 50 trees to establish a land claim and demonstrate that you intended to settle. So that's a lot of what he was doing when he's planting apple seeds, was to establish these land claims. So he began planting these nurseries, not wild trees. They were organized, fenced, protected nurseries that could support future communities. Because he valued self-reliance, he often gave seeds away and asked only small trades in return: clothes, bread, or thanks. Section 3, why his faith made him seem strange. Because Swedenborg taught that even insects had souls, he refused to kill them, including mosquitoes and wasps, often relocating them gently. He's very in tune with nature, I guess, all the way down to insects. You mentioned pacifism earlier. He refused violence in all forms, preaching that harming any creature delayed one's spiritual growth. And after decades of traveling around barefoot, people began seeing him as eccentric, but they also respected him deeply, calling him a saint in rags. He would stay in settlers' homes and read Swedenborg's tracts by firelight. So he's kind of became seen as this, he's so different that he just gained trust of people because, like, everyone knew he wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
Just this guy out.
Guy won't even kill a
wandering.
mosquito. I don't think he's going to harm our family.
Yeah. He gained trust in both the white and indigenous communities, and he often traveled safely where others feared to go. Section 4, how he became a living rebuttal to America. Subtitle, what his life quietly said about everything others chased. But because America was rapidly industrializing, his non-ownership, poverty, and spiritual eccentricity were quietly edited out of public memory. As a result, his story was reframed. He became a cheerful children's character, stripped of his sermons, his mysticism, and his challenge to wealth. And I mean, I guess he lived as if he was poor, but he was somewhat wealthy. He died with 1,200 acres just from these land claims, I guess, he had established by planting these orchards. And in 1948, I guess Disney made something that kind of popularized him as this character and name of Johnny Appleseed. So I think that's where a lot of the modern portrayal of him came from. After this, the sanitized Johnny Appleseed became canonical, gentle, non-threatening, safe for bedtime. Because of that erasure, the true power of his life, the radical contentment with nothing, was lost just when it was needed the most. Section 5.
In the Disney version, he's just a wild capitalist. Just out there.
Oh, gee. Yeah. Planting these seeds because grow the gross domestic product of this great nation.
100 apples
Look,
we can
kids.
use to trade internationally. Look at that. We receive a couple pencils from Japan. Japan received
This
some
is
apples.
the beauty.
The beauty of the free market. And I love shoes.
And also, I love shoes. I don't know why. I just couldn't find some most of the time. But
I heard, this is kind of irrelevant about the story, but somebody said that they disproved flat Earth to their friend because they said if the Earth was flat, somebody would have set up like a Disneyland at the edge, for you to come see over the edge of the Earth.
oh, they would have monetized the edge of the Earth.
And
yeah,
the person was like, yeah, the guy believed in corporate greed more than he believed in flat Earth.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I guess someone would have done that by now. Good point. Haven't thought of it that way. Section 5. Then we got a big closing paragraph to finish with. Section 5. Why his life still preaches today. Subtitle. In a world drowning in things, he reminds us what's worth keeping. Today's world is defined by consumption, ambition, and overstimulation. But John Chapman's message in this world feels almost alien. Because he believed in a heaven woven into the earth, his life offers a different version of freedom. Not from want, but from wanting. After all, he left no empire, no monuments, just trees. He wasn't just planting trees. He was quietly rejecting a way of life. In a world racing towards ownership, wealth, and permanence, he chose something else. Impermanence, simplicity, trust in the land, and faith that meaning didn't have to be bought or built. He owned little, wanted less, and walked lightly, because he believed the soul had no need for accumulation. His orchards weren't acts of conquest, they were gifts. And long after he was gone, they kept growing. Not in his name, but in his spirit. Today, in a culture obsessed with more, his life reminds us what can happen when we ask for less.
The aliens are flying in the sky. Most of us are their politicians lie. What a time to be alive. I don't really know what to make of the internet.